Hey guys, so in this one we're going to add different damage types because having only one damage type is quite boring, so we will create custom ones like fire damage, cold damage, poison damage and so on. And then we can also change the color of damage indicators. First thing that we need to do is create some damage types. So if you haven't noticed, in this apply point damage we do have this damage type class, which most of the people don't know how to use. So we're going to create different classes for each damage type, and then we're going to pass that information to the player basically, and then to combat component in this take damage, because here we do have damage type which is not class anymore, but we can work with that because this is a reference. So as I said, we're going to create damage types, so just right click and create new folder. I already created mine, which is called damage types. Open it up, and here we're going to right click, go to blueprint class, and search for damage type. Select it, and this one will be called base damage type. Open it up, and here we just need to create one variable. So as you can see, this is not like a regular blueprint. We don't have event graph or anything like that. We just have some variables and we can call some functions. So for the variables, we will create actual damage type, which will be stats type. So stats enumerator, and we actually don't need to make it instance editable or expose on spawn, because each different damage type will have different damage type set here. And this will go from stats, so we need to first create it in stats. So let's go to enumerators, stats, and here we're going to create new damage. I have already set up fire damage, cold damage and poison damage before in the tutorial, so I'm going to use those, and I'm also going to add lightning damage. So let's just add new enumerator, and as I said, first one will be fire damage, and second one will be cold damage, third one will be poison damage, and the last one will be lightning damage. And also we do have this base damage, which shouldn't be just regular damage. This needs to be physical now. So this one will change to physical damage, because that is what we have on most of the weapons. And this will be for like spells or maybe some infused weapons and stuff like that. So while we're here in the stats, we can also set up resistance, because we will be using them later. So we do have fire resistance, cold resistance and poison resistance if you followed my tutorial. If not, if you have some custom ones, don't be worried, just create whatever you like. If you like water, fire, air, or damage types like that, or if you want to have shadow one or anything else, you can add as many as you like. Just also create some resistance, because we'll calculate damage reduction as we have for this physical damage by armor. We're going to use different resistance for each element. So I'm only missing lightning resistance, so I'm going to add it. This will be lightning resistance. And now we can close this stats enumerator. And what we're going to do is create different damage types. So open it up again, right click, and create child blueprint class. First one will be fire damage type. Right click on the base one again and create child. This one will be cold damage type. Right click again on the base one. We need poison damage type. Right click again and create lightning damage type. And we actually need the physical one as well now. So create child, and this will be physical damage type. Alright, save all so we don't lose progress. And now on each one we need to open them up and we need to set that stat. So we do have it here now. So you can see damage type, which I spelled wrong. So I'm going to go back to base type, base damage type. And here this needs to be actually damage type. Save it. Now in the cold damage, we're going to change this variable to cold damage. In fire damage, we will change it to fire damage. Careful, because I do have this percentage, which I'm probably going to delete. I might do percentage in the stats, as we have current and max. I'll also add percentage probably, so it will be done differently than this, so ignore those. But here it's fire, so fire damage, lightning damage, physical damage, which is up here, and the last one, you guessed it, is poison damage. Again, I'm going to save all. So now we do have all the damage types. I'm going to close them. And now how do we actually use them? So first, before I actually close it, because we need to add interface. So open the base one again. And we're going to go to class settings, implement and interfaces, and add combat BPI. And now we can also use the functions. One function we need to create is that will actually get the damage type. So let's go to interfaces, combat BPI, add new function, and this will be get damage type. And this will be a little bit different because we don't need input. This time we need output. And this will be type stats, enumerator. And this will be damage type. Compile and save. We do have this interface in base damage type, so double click on it. I'm also going to change it again to combat category as everything else. And then in base damage type, double click, and all we have to do is just connect this variable. And since in each children of this, we do have it set to correct damage type, we can just call this interface function and it will give us different damage type stat. So compile and save. Now we can close it. And here we're going to do a little bit different setup. So drag it back. And here we need to do for each loop. But we don't want to loop all of the stats. We only want to loop the actual damage types, because that will be looping too long. So we're going to create a new variable, which will be array or damage type array. And this will be stats enumerator. And we will make it an array. And here you just need to add all of the damage types. So physical, fire, cold, poison, and lightning. Alright, so I have 5. If you have more, just add more. And then we get this damage type array and do for each loop of the is valid connected to execution, and then we'll be looping through the body and applying point damage. Here we need to do select. So we'll select based on this array element. Unfortunately, this is all stats enumerator, so here we have all the stats, but we will be only looping through this damage type array, so only thing that we will come across is the physical damage, which we need to set to physical damage type. And down here we need fire damage, cold damage type, poison damage type, and lightning damage type. Alright, so it will pass the correct class. And also we will be checking these stats. It won't be just physical damage, we'll be checking this one here, which will be looping again. So physical, fire, cold, and so on. Alright, it will get that stat and check if we have any damage in it. So If we don't have any damage in it, we don't want to apply point damage, because then our damage indicator also would be created and it would show 0. So we don't want to apply damage if it's 0. So we're going to check if this one is greater than 0, do branch. And if it's true, then we apply point damage. If it's false, we don't do anything. We will just go to the next array element. Compile and save. And now in take damage, sorry, no, we need to go to player first. So we do have this event point damage. But as I showed you, here we don't have the actual class that we can access. We only have a reference that will be damage type. So if we're passing it to take damage, so open it up. And here, what we can do is from this reference, we can now call get damage type, which we have set up in the interface. Type message. And suddenly we do have a stat that will be fire damage, physical damage, and so on. So we can work with this. What we want to do first is we want to pass it to return node. So I'm going to also promote it to variable local one, and this will be local damage type. We'll set it, connect it to here, and then we also want to return it. So we can create damage indicator. So output will be, we can't call it damage type because we do have damage type here. So this will be damage type stat. And this will be stats enumerator. All you have to do is connect this local one. And now what we want to do is in enemy, because that's the only place we need to spawn indicators from this one. We open it up, and then after we take damage and calculate the damage, we need to spawn damage indicator. This spawn damage indicator also needs this damage type stat. So let's open combat BPI, spawn damage indicator, add again damage type. This will be stats. Compile and save it. And one more place we need it, because if we pass it from enemy, from take damage to this one, we also need to pass it to the actual damage indicator. So inside widget, damage indicator, not the placeholder, but the actual damage indicator first. Go to graph, create new variable, and this will be damage type, which will be stats enumerator. Let's make it instance editable and also expose on spawn, so we can pass it even before the construct. And now we open the damage indicator placeholder. And if you right click and refresh this, we can just pass this from event spawn damage indicator to damage type. And now we have damage type inside damage indicator. So what we can do is just set color of text based off that. So we can move all this back. And I'm going to get this damage text and set color and opacity. This one we will select. Do I need to select it? Maybe we need to, oh, let me try it actually. I think maybe we need to make slate color first. This one, and we connect damage type. No, so drag from this, make slate color, and then connect this one here. Of the select. So from the specified color select, and this will give us all the stats again. If we connect the damage type, so just move it up here somewhere. We can also collapse it to, you can just right click and collapse to nodes, so it's not in the way. I don't mind it up here, But again, we need to set the color for each one. So physical damage, I'm just going to leave at something gray. So not white, but gray. I'm going to change fire damage. That's quite obvious one, so this will be red. Cold, I'm changing the resistance. So this one needs to be whatever it was, black. So fire damage, red one. Cold damage is like light blue, almost white maybe. Poison damage is green. Lightning damage is blue, or you know, whatever you like it to be. Don't have to do the same ones. And that is all. 5 damage types. Those will be the only ones that we will use. And now we can actually test it out, but we don't have any other damage than physical one on the player. But instead of changing it in data table for some weapons, we can just add it to stats component and add it manually. So I'm going to add only one at a time, so because if you add 5 different types, it will be a little bit overlapping that damage indicator, and you most likely won't have 5 different damage types active at the same time anyway. So I'm going to do maybe, I don't know, poison damage. And one more thing I wanted to change, I think it's going to look a little bit better, is if in damage indicator you go to designer, and on this text we're going to add shadow color. So there is a little bit of outline. So just change this one alpha to 1. And now back in the player, sorry, I didn't actually add any value to this, so max stat will be, I don't know, 15. So I'll have a 15 poison damage as well. Now if you play the game, and I go to my 2-hand, I should be applying, you can see this one is now physical damage, because that is what is on this club. But I should also have the poison one. So I attack, and I did not connect something because it's not floating up suddenly. So damage indicator, alright, okay, this one needs to go here, because they were overlapping. And I'm not sure if I changed the color of poison damage correctly. Yeah, it's black. So you can see I do have 2 different damage types. But why is this one black? That's probably my fault here. Poison damage. Poison damage should be green. Set color and opacity, specify color, slate color, set color. That's all fine. Player, stats, poison damage, 15. Maybe somewhere I'm not passing it through, so here it goes from local damage type to damage type stat. I'm going to actually print string if I'm passing the correct damage type. Because I probably made a mistake somewhere. So it says physical damage and default. Okay, so it shouldn't be default. Maybe in the blueprints, damage type itself. Poison damage type. Yeah, okay, so my poison damage type is not changed. It needs to be poison damage. This one is physical, lightning, so I just forgot one. The only one I actually chose. So one more test. Damage indicators and all this stuff. There we go. And now we got poison damage being applied nicely. And now you can actually add these different damage types to different weapons. You can have like this club, for example, instead of physical damage, it can have poison damage. Or later on we can infuse weapons with different damage types and it will be super cool. And now last thing we need to do is reduce damage by resistance. So it's similar to what we're doing with armor. But let's go to combat components. And here we do have damage type now. So here we also need to do select. based on this local damage type. I'm going to remove this print string now and connect it back. And if this one is, so we're getting the max stat. So if this one is armor, sorry, if this one is physical damage, it needs to be armor because we're reducing damage, physical damage by armor. And for these ones, we need to get the resistance. So for fire damage, it will be fire resistance, cold damage will be cold resistance, poison damage will be poison resistance, and lightning damage will be lightning resistance. But we don't want to do this calculation because resistance should be a little bit higher. So if you have like 100 resistance, you should resist pretty much everything. So it should be 0 to 100, like a percentage. But I'm going to reduce it by only a little bit. So I'm also going to add maybe only like 50 to this one, if it's not an armor, if it's not a physical damage. So this one we can do select as well, again based on this. And then, so again, if it's physical damage, this will be 500, what did we have before? 500, right, for armor. So that is just that reduction, so you don't actually reach maximum. So you don't resist 100%. So that's what we're doing. So physical damage 500. But then for this fire damage, poison resistance, so for fire damage, I'm going to do only like 50 or 100. I think if you do 100 on 100 fire resistance, you should have, I don't know, 75%. We'll see. You can test it out as well. So cold damage, I'm going to do 100 here, 100 and 100. This is wrong. This we don't need. This can be 0. This is resistance. It's only on the damage. Okay. And the rest of the calculation is the same. So now if I, for example, I do have this poison damage, which I'm going to make nice 100 so we can see it better. So my poison damage will be 100. But on this enemy, he is going to have a 50 resistance, which should be kind of like a 50% damage reduction. So stats component on this enemy, add poison resistance. Where are you, poison resistance? Right here. And then 50. So now let's see from 100 damage how much I'm actually going to apply. So get this. There we go, 67. So I reduced it by 33. So it's not exactly 50% because there is that reduction. But then if you reached actually 100 resistance, so poison resistance is 100, I won't be actually absorbing all of it because that would be a little bit silly. You would prepare yourself for some certain dungeon or some certain enemies and they wouldn't be able to hurt you. So instead of doing 100, I'm doing 50 only, which is still quite a lot actually. That doesn't seem to be working correctly. Stats, poison resistance. Let me try to do 200. $33. Okay, so this value needs to be lower. So on the combat components, I'm going to change this only to, I'll think 25, because I want the resistance really to be like 0 to 100. So lower it is, the more you will resist. So 25, 25, 25, 25, and don't forget physical is 500. So now I'm going to change this back to 100 resistance. And let's see how much I actually apply. You can play with this value and whatever suits your game better. So for me, if I apply 100 damage, this is 20. So it's 80% reduction on 100 resistance, which is fine by me. So that works perfect. Right. Okay, so cool. That's how you set up damage types. It's not that difficult once you get used to it. You can create as many as you like, and it's quite easy setup. So yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Bye.